Today, we are about to deliver on the promise of making affordable, quality health care available for all Americans, laying the foundation for a brighter future for generations to come.
Surrounded by her Democratic members of Congress, Speaker Pelosi unveils the House health care bill. It's been a long haul.
Stop the Press is an actual, real-life piece of health care legislation. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday, we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And you keep the conversation going all day long. It's twitter.com/The Note. Let us know what you think.
I am terribly sorry for your loss, sir.
Yanks and 5 still stand by it.
Kick us off. What's your top line?
Robust bust. There is a health care bill finally reaching the floor of the House of Representatives. Speaker Nancy Pelosi on the Capitol steps today to unveil it, but it does not include the so-called robust public option. That would be something that would tie the rates to Medicare. That was the point that liberals have been making for a long time. It needs to be robust. It needs to tie it to Medicare. That's how you get the big savings. It's not there. The liberals going to roll over.
Well, you know, I predict they will. They're not happy about this. But my question is, if you make this moderation now, if you're Nancy Pelosi, do you assume you have to make no more moderation when you go to conference with the Senate, or does it even get further away from where the liberals are? Second up, economic expansion. That's right. Gross domestic product today was reported to be 3.5% growth in the third quarter of this year. This is the first time, Rick, in more than a year that we're seeing the economy grow. So, of course, the White House immediately says this is a welcome milestone, but there's lots of work to do. The Republicans immediately remind everyone that Obama sold a $787 billion stimulus bill, called it a jobs bill, and that so far there are no jobs. This is still a jobless recovery.
David, if I'm the Democrats, I don't put out a single press release about any economic news other than job creation. I stay away from all of this stuff. I don't want to put my name attached to this because that's the only metric that matters.
But if there is no job creation, you got to put something out.
Well, you can ignore it. I think that's the other way around it. Bill's fault. David Plouffe's new memoir is out. He was the campaign manager for President Obama, and a fascinating anecdote in an excerpt that's released on Time Magazine's website. He says that President Obama was very much close to naming Hillary Clinton to be his running mate last year, but was afraid that it would be basically getting the two of them and that there'd be too much baggage that Bill would carry. That plus his perceptions, David Plouffe's perceptions of Joe Biden right off the bat, and Joe Biden's 20-minute filibuster in his first meeting with him and David Axelrod, I think getting a lot of attention today.
The Hillary Clinton thing was fascinating because in Plouffe's telling of this, it was Obama, more so than Axelrod or Plouffe, who really wanted to keep Hillary Clinton on that short list for as long as possible. He really thought she fit the mold of what he was looking for in a vice president. We had her, I think, written off long before perhaps Barack Obama
Even Obama himself.
And finally, the first marriage, a fascinating cover story in the upcoming issue of the New York Times Magazine this Sunday. It'll hit your doorstep. We'll talk with New York Times reporter Jody Cantor a little bit later. Rick, this is interesting that the first couple, Michelle and Barack Obama, sat down for an Oval Office interview to discuss how their current life is sort of impacting their relationship.
That's the kind of story the Clintons would never, ever, ever cooperate with.
Well, for obvious reasons, I would imagine. We're going to begin with that health care bill that was just unveiled in the last couple of hours by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We are joined by the chairman of the Democratic caucus up there on Capitol Hill, John Larson, Democrat of Connecticut. Congressman, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
I want to start, if I may, with the public option. Obviously, that's been one of the controversial points in this health care debate overall. The bill that you guys in the leadership now have put forward as the House bill that's going to hit the floor, it does not include this idea of a quote-unquote robust public option that a lot of... Whoa, hang on, let me get to the question, sir. It does not include this idea of a robust public option that would be tied to Medicare payment rates. Instead, It's going to be negotiated rates. And my question to you is, what is the point then? Because now, it seemed to me the whole point of a public option was tie it to Medicare rates, have it not be a level playing field. That injects the competition that gives the insurance companies reason to bring down their prices and compete. Here, it's just, okay, it's not for profit, but how else does it bring down costs?
Well, the whole choice, as you point out, was about cost savings, and that's what the public option does. And so the choice became between negotiated rate or Medicare plus 5, as you pointed out, where the votes were with a negotiated rate. And so that's why we are going to have a public option, why there is going to be lowering of the cost, and that's what's so vitally important about the bill, and getting Democrats to come together on this historic day and to have legislation that is tantamount to the passage of Social Security and Medicare, and to have 36 million Americans who otherwise wouldn't get insurance have it, is a matter of character and morality as much as it is part of the economy.
You spent a lot of time talking to your colleagues, including a lot of the blue dogs and the liberals who were saying they need a robust public option. Are you convinced that you've got those two blocks on board, or are liberals going to stick by what they said before, that no robust public option, that they're not going to support this?
What I think everybody in the caucus sticks by is the notion that they understand how important it is to have health care reform. Everybody in the caucus is aware of the Frank Luntz amendment, agenda that he had, and the memorandum he put out back in February that said, if you want to stop Obama, stop health care.
But clearly the entire caucus is not going to vote for health care reform, right?
We're going to pass health care reform, and we've got the votes to do it. And part of the job of being a member of the caucus, remember in our caucus we have the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Asian Pacific Caucus, Blue Dogs, Progressives, New Dems, Green Dogs, you name it. But we're all together on this, and that's the important thing. So oftentimes, I know it appears to you guys, and it is a lot like herding cats, but nonetheless, we're unified, and we're coming together behind the great leadership of Nancy Pelosi.
Congressman, I want to talk about the difference between the House and the Senate and how you guys pay for this.
Sure.
In your version of the bill, there is in the House version, there's this surcharge, a tax for individuals earning over $500,000 a year, or families earning over $1 million a year.
That's correct.
That's how you pay for this in large part, this expanded health care coverage. In the Senate side, it's this idea of a quote-unquote Cadillac tax, taxing these high, expensive plans.
Well, we don't think taxing firefighters and teachers.
Right.
And,
I get that you're concerned about those folks, Congressman. Let me get to the question, though.
One man's Cadillac is another person's Edsel. So
Congressman, you have all these answers before I get to the question. Hang on. So the question is, I want you to describe for me how you envision those two things are two totally different approaches. Where is the compromise in conference, do you think? What does that look like? Because it seems like you got to do one or the other.
Well, I think what happens, and obviously you're right, in the conference itself, there will be a compromise that takes place. I just think at the end of the day that the people will prevail, and that when it comes to taxing people's benefits, I think there's a great sensitivity around that, and I think that violates a lot of what the president was talking about in terms of creating a tax on the middle class. And so I think the conference will settle in on the goals of $500,000 per individual and $1 million per couple. That's where I think that we'll end up. But that remains to be seen. That's why you have a conference, as they say. That's why everyone suits up and plays the game. But I feel strongly that at the end of the day, I think the Senate and House will come together on what's the best for the American people.
Congressman, I want to ask you one question about the senator from Connecticut, your colleague, Joe Lieberman, who's making a lot of noises about possibly holding up health care reform. I'm curious the reaction in Connecticut and what this means potentially for the House races that will be going on for you and for some of your neighbors in Connecticut, knowing that Joe Lieberman is potentially standing against health care reform.
Well, Connecticut overwhelmingly supports a public option. And I think in part because it both drives the cost down and also provides the greatest opportunity that people, especially in small business, are going to have a greater opportunity to both afford an insurance policy and create the competition that we believe will create a climate so that you'll have that opportunity to get the insurance. So I have great respect for Joe Lieberman. I've known him all my adult life. I just happen to disagree with him. I disagree with him on the war in Iraq, and I disagree with him on this issue. Joe is Joe, and I can't account for Joe, and I'm sure he believes this. I don't question his motives, but the state of Connecticut and the people there, and we have strong insurance influence. In fact, some of our companies would prefer the public option. They want those 47 million more customers.
Congressman John Larson, you're the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus up there on the Hill, one of Nancy Pelosi's top lieutenants. Thank you very much for being here. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman.
You're welcome.
Well, overnight, President Obama went on a bit of a field trip, a really interesting trip that he made to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where the caskets of deceased service members were coming back. And these are images, David, that we're watching right now. We've never seen a president of the United States like this before.
When he came off that C-17 aircraft, he had been there basically alone with one aide and the 18 caskets at that point. This middle-of-the-night trip while he's deciding his Afghanistan strategy, clearly a part of sort of telling the American people how seriously he's taking this.
Yes.
That's right. It says a lot, I think, about the way that he is conceptualizing not just his decision making, but also the way that he's going to explain his decision ultimately to the American people.